So in my previous video, in which I was showcasing my development workflow of using Neovim and tmux together, it got a really good response, and a lot of you guys were asking me to make a tutorial on how to set up your Neovim and tmux to basically be productive in it. And so this consider this to be a from the ground up series on building your own tmux and kitty and neovim home, and sort of centering your workflow around it. And in this part 1 of the 3-part series that I'm planning, I'll be going over how you can sort of get started with neovim. I'm not going to be teaching you NeoVim as in the Vim bindings and how to work with the terminal and Vim in general. This is more of how to customize NeoVim using a really popular package manager called lazy.nvim, which is what I use. So to get started, I have set up a completely vanilla Debian environment. So from here, we can get started. So as you can see here, this is a completely new install of Debian. I have just a little some small stuff, but other than that I don't have much. I have a web browser and I'm using Kitty for my terminal. So go ahead, open up your terminal. I'm using Kitty, which is a GPU accelerated terminal. It's quite cool. And on top of that, I'm using Fish Shell, which is just vanilla fish shell. So it's Noob Science at Debian. This is a virtual machine running on an Ubuntu host. The previous setup, if you guys are curious, is based off of my personal Ubuntu setup. And actually, let me see if I can get that up. So this was the setup that I had showcased in the previous video. Our setup in our VM will look similar to this after we are done with it. But for now, this is how it looks like. So let me open up nvim here, and so this is how neovim currently looks like, and this is still cool, but not as cool as this. Plus, I can also do some awesome stuff like this, and yeah, it's just awesome. And your your terminal will also look like this by the end of it. So with that being said, there are some prerequisites to my tutorial. First up, I'm assuming that you have a knowledge of the Vim key bindings, as in you can work in NeoVim. I mean, you can work with the Vim key bindings. If you're not familiar, I recommend you download the Vim key bindings on your VS Code or your Sublime text editor or whatever you use, or JetBrains. Whatever you use, just install Vim key bindings, get familiar with the Vim key bindings. Then once you're familiar, I recommend you shift over to NeoVim, and then you can follow this tutorial side by side. And one more disclaimer before getting into the tutorial. This tutorial is not going to be a tutorial on how to completely replicate my setup. This is more of showing you how to do it on your own and giving you resources on where you can find useful plugins and useful color schemes so that you can make NeoVim your own. I really like this idea that a YouTuber called TJ mentions in his videos, where NeoVim is an IDE that you make for yourself. So that is the idea we'll be relying on. This is just a showcase on what you can do with NeoVim and how to do it. So with that preface being said, let's get started. So we have NeoVim open. So first things first, if you do not know, most of the programs that you use have a config directory, and that is in the cd config/nvim in the case of NeoVim. So this is where we'll be writing config files in a language called Lua to essentially configure our Neovim ecosystem. So to do this, simply type in init.lua. That's it. It's really simple. Now open that up in Neovim, and this essentially is your setup. Now, first thing that we are going to be doing is going to Google and searching up lazy.nvim, which gets us to github.com/fork/lazy.nvim. I'm sorry if I butcher the pronunciation there, but this is a really excellent plugin manager for Neovim. It is awesome. It just works. It is so good. It's just awesome. So I recommend you go through the whole docs. This is not a step-by-step instruction on how to use this. We'll just be using this, and I'll explain it to you along the way. So first up, one way of writing your configs is to just write them all in init.lua, like just spam init.lua, and Neovim is cool with that. It will accept it, but the more community recommended way is to set up a folder directory structure. So to do that, first you make a Lua directory and call it Lua slash, oh right, you make it one by one. So first you make Lua, and then you make Lua slash nvim. Now this name can be anything, but the directory name has to be Lua. So once you make that, go into that, cd into the directory, also make two directories called plugins and the core, right? So with this being said, you are pretty much done with the directory structure. Also, while you're in here, touch a file called lazy.lua, and this will essentially complete your folder structure. Let me show you how it looks. So the home directory should have just init.lua and lua, and then inside lua slash nvim, you should have this structure, right? Okay, so with this, quickly head on to init.lua, and in here all you need to do is say require nvim.lazy, right? Remember the lazy.lua that we have just written. Now the moment Neovim opens up, in it the lazy.lua is the first file that it'll open up. So what do we want to do? The moment Neovim opens up, we want to load in lazy, because lazy not only acts as a plugin manager, it also dynamically sort of starts plugins based off of our needs. So these lines can be found in the repo, but they'll also be linked in the description. Now once you've pasted those, in the last line, this line in particular, require lazy.setup, this is where you're setting up the package. So here in setup, I want you to pass nvim-plugins. Now this is your plugins directory, if you remember, and this is quite useful. So now that you have done this, just exit out, press nvim again. It'll give you the initial error. This error's good, it's alright. Press enter, and then if we type in semicolon lazy, you will see that lazy has been installed. As you can see, the loaded plugins are lazy.nvim, and this is an nvim interface. So you can traverse along this like you would just a normal Neovim buffer, right? So quite out of that, you have essentially completed your package manager setup. Now for the fun stuff, open up Neovim again. Now type in :EX to open up the netrw directory listing. Now head on into Lua, nvim, plugins, and in here create a file by using :E space whatever file. Now this is where you can begin setting up your plugins. Now there are a variety of plugins that you can install for Neovim, but I have made a list of the 12 of the most popular ones and the ones I use. So the first that we're going to be installing is the color scheme, because I'm a big fan of color schemes. So the first thing is going to be monokai-pro.nvim. Now the way that we have structured our whole system, if you have been following along, in order to install this, all you have to do is create a new file called colorscheme.lua, press enter, and this has to return a Lua table that does that. And in the config function, think of config as the callback that gets triggered once this is loaded. That's not exactly what's happening, but it's pretty close. So it's then we use vim.cmd to execute a vim command that says color scheme is monokai pro spectrum. Hopefully I spell it properly. And we obviously end the function. And if all has went well, hopefully now if we do lazy again, it's not able to detect it for some reason. Oh, we have created it in the wrong section. So as you can see, since we are not able to do that, it didn't recognize. I quickly moved back. Now it has recognized that we have installed monokai.pro.nvim and it has started up. That automatically changed how our Neovim looks. Now as you can see, we have a monokai theme going on. And if I put this in full screen right now, this is going to look pretty cool. So congrats, you have just installed your first plugin. Now there are many plugins that you can install, and I'm also going to be installing 2 to 3 more plugins so that you get familiar with how to actually do this. So the next up on our bucket list is to actually replace this netrw directory listing, because although this looks pretty nerdy and cool, it doesn't give off the vibes, the monokai vibes, the professional vibes. I'm just kidding. So we go into Lua and then again we go into the plugins, and right here for some reason creating a directory here is not doing much. So instead I'm going to quit it and then go into Lua /nupsign/plugins manually, or let's just touch it from here /plugins/ we are going to be installing something called nvim-tree. That is a really good like file tree for Neovim. So once we have done that, we can once again use exe one final time, go into plugins / go into nvim.lua, and since we are configuring our Neovim using Neovim itself, it is very common to come into errors and all of the weird stuff. In most of the cases, the error will fix itself once you restart. By restart, I mean you quit Neovim and come back into it. So rest assured, nothing fancy happening there. So next up on our line is nvim-tree.lua. And for this plugin in specific, I can show you how the instructions look like. So just Google this. You'll come into this. This is a really popular GitHub repository. And if you go all the way here, most of the plugins have a recommended section of setup. So this setup right here is how they expect to sort of for you to start the plugin. Now this is set up with some options. This would work just fine according to them. So, but they also recommend we need to disable netrw, and that is a must. So with this, we have gotten a little context on what to do, and most of the plugins you use will have a sort of a section for installing it with lazy. So for example, let's see, if I use which-key, which is a repo from the author of lazy.pt, Vim itself, so hopefully it has a section. There you go. It's as easy as just taking this, slapping in a return statement beside it, and you're done. Let's actually do that. So to install which-key, which gives us a sort of autocomplete for Vim features. This is really useful if you're not really good and you can't remember Vim plugins yet. So let's go into our nvim directory. Remember the way to create stuff. I know we were installing nvim-tree. Let's put that to the side for a bit, and instead let us install which-key, which would give you more context on how to install it using Neovim. So we go with the .exe, head on over, use plugins, go to which-key, and right here we just type in return and press that. And that will pretty much, Lazy will auto detect that something changed, right? So it automatically knows what to do, and hopefully now if we just run Lazy, you'll see that it is detecting which key needs to be installed. So press capital I, that will start installing this. As you can see, it already looks so much better. Okay, now that is done essentially. So now if I quit and open up the nvim tree again, let's open up Neovim and press in exe, probably head on back to nvim tree, and I press control or something. I'm not exactly sure what command to press that would trigger it, but probably if I press in D or something, which-key should hopefully be triggered. Is it? Well, the execution is lazy, so hopefully, let's see if it's active. Let's to see the status, you just go to lazy, and as you can see, which-key is very lazy. So sometimes it may trigger, sometimes it may not trigger, but extended periods of time it may trigger. I don't know why it is not triggering in this case. Hopefully it looks like this. So if I come back to my original setup, I press the space bar. As you can see, that down arrow button right there, that is how it actually looks like. So hopefully that gave you enough context. Right. So next up, installing nvim-tray. So for this, again, we return this, and right here in nvim-tree, you need to copy in this part of the repo. Press that, and then config is equal to function. And in the function, all we want to do is we want to require nvim-tree and call the setup function. And with this, we want to merrily end it. Nothing much, nothing fancy, and hopefully Lazy detects this. And now that we run Lazy, you'll see that nvim-tree is not installed. So we press capital I to install it, which will take some time, but it'll install nvim-tree. And once that is set up, we can quit the buffer. We can quit Neovim and open it up again. And now if we do :nvim-tree toggle, you'll see that we have our very own file sitter, which is pretty cool. Now you can configure this to your liking. All of the config options are in their GitHub repo, or if you want to look into my personal nvim-tree config that looks like this, let me open that up for you. So this is how my own config looks like. So we are requiring nvim-tree, and then we are setting up all of this stuff, right? And we are also binding the leader key, which is pretty cool. So that is how. And also notice that my nvim-tree has the file icons. If you need the file icons, all you need to do is install this dependency right here that we will be doing right now. So to install dependencies, first go into the table where you are returning the actual config, type in dependencies, right? And once you type in dependencies, next you would want another table, and in that table you would, oh, I'd apparently pasted in the whole line, so in that I could have just done that, and that would have worked. Okay, good to know. And so now that we have done that, let us run lazy again. So as you can see, it detects that nvim tree needs dev icons. So now that we have installed that as well, and now if we say nvim tree toggle, you'll see that we have pretty cool file icons. And there we go. You can see the Lua icon, which is pretty cool. Now creating files will be easier for us. All I have to do is press A on my keyboard and I can create the file. So next up, I would like to install another very popular plugin called, let me show that to you guys. This popular plugin is called nvim-tree, and this is going to be a little bit more complex. So what nvim-treesitter does is it boosts your highlighting experience. That is the best way I can put it. It is basically a tree sitter, i.e. it gives Neovim additional context on how to render and what to render in which color. I know I didn't put that properly, but please bear with me. So to install this, all you need to do is we create a new file, call it nvim-treesitter.lua, and now we open that up. We use nvim-tree toggle to close that out. We'll probably bind it to a key binding later on in the video. This is going to be a last plugin. After this, we are going to be getting into the customization part a little bit. So paste that in. Next, we pass in a config function, and in the config function, we require this exact thing. So we need that right there, and then we set it up. But also, before we do this, so remember how I told you this is a little bit complex. So before we actually call the setup, before I forget, let's actually just call it an end there. When lazynim actually installs this, we want to also add a build step because that is specified in the docs. You have a go through with it, you'll understand. See this here, do ts update. We need to call that the moment this is executed. So we just put that over there. That'll take care of it. And also, treesitter is generally a costly program, so we do not want to call it every time. So the only time we want to actually trigger this is if you are reading a buffer or if you are writing a new buffer. So this will essentially speed up your whole process by a lot. And in the setup itself, I would like to also enable the tree sitter by default. Why is it not default? I don't know. But yeah, you do have to enable it like this in order for it to work. You say enable is equal to true, and that will essentially be the end of it. You press lazy detects you have nvim-treesitter, you install nvim-treesitter, you wait for it because this seems to be a lot. And yeah, now that that is installed, you just quit, open up Neovim again. You use, oops, I'm sorry, you use nvim-tree toggle right there to toggle your nvim-tree. You go into plugins, go to nvim-treesitter, and there you go. Looks 10 times better. You can see that it has lot better syntax highlighting. It's just awesome. So in this first part of our tutorial series, I have showed you how to build your Neovim configuration and install plugins. But what I didn't really get into was the LSP part of it. Now, if you're curious as to what I mean by an LSP, let me switch back to my original setup so I can show you something. So this is a Go project that I'm working on. So if I go right here and delete this, you'll see that I almost immediately get undefined errors. And all of that shows up in a cool little way right there. And I've set up my configuration such that I press the leader key and my telescope gives me a view of where all the errors are. And in fact, I can also do a leader CA to get code actions on what to do. So I press that, it actually tells me to define it. So that is how LSP works. It stands for Language Server Protocol. And setting this up will be for the next part of the tutorial series. But for this part at least, I want to end it with also showing you how to populating the core directory. Now the core directory is traditionally used for setting up the internal parts of nvim. So think of it as the key bindings, the settings, all of that stuff, right? So I have a pretty big core myself, but here is a small glimpse of how yours might look like. So first go to core and set up keymaps.lua. But first up, we need to include the core to load in the first place. So we do a quick require noobscience.core. So that loads up our core. And now we can go back to core into keymaps. And the first order of business is setting our map leader, or the leader key as it is called, to be a simple spacebar. Now this is awesome. I'm literally back with this. So that is one example of setting a key map. Another key map that we would like to set, for example, is, let's say, to set a key map, you do vim.keymap.set. In which mode do you want it to? I want it to be in normal mode. And then you specify the command. So in my case, this will be leader T. And if I press leader T, I want Neovim to, in fact, call upon the nvim tree. Remember the nvim tree that we had just installed? I want Neovim to call upon that. So to do that, I say cmd nvim-tree.lua and I end it with a cr. And what this essentially means is call on nvim-tree.lua just like we did here. So if I source this, in fact, and just for good measure do that, and we have the first error, noobscience.core not found. Well, that's weird because noobscience.core is right there. emaps.lua is right there. Huh, that's weird. Anyhow, let's how about we do this? We put the core underneath, but that would not essentially do anything. Little bit of debugging here. I might put this thing like debugging going on here or something. But yeah, we have forgotten one essential thing, I guess. I just remembered. We need to create /core /init.lua because we are calling upon it directly. So we would need to do this step. I forgot about that. I'm sorry. So we need to go to core and we need to, in fact, require nvim-science, I'm sorry, I've misspelled my own name, nvim-science.core.emaps. So hopefully now with this setup, this will be all happy. So if I press leader T now, you can see my Neovim, and that essentially is the core setup. Now you can also have another called options.lua. So in options.lua, you can I usually set up various options of nvim. So I have like 26 lines of standard Neovim options that I set. I would not recommend these exact to you. I mean, it depends. I quite like these, but you may or may not like these. So use it at your own risk. Uh, there's no harm by trying it out, but just look out to it. I'm going to be pasting all of them right here for you guys to see. So these are all of my sort of nvim stuff. So let me actually show how it looks after I apply this. So once that those are applied, actually, and let me also require this. So nvim-science.core.options. There we go. We write that out, close that buffer. There we go. core/options. So this is more feeling like home. As you can see, which-key is also working now. Suddenly everything is in place. That's cool. So there you go. If you want me to explain the options to you, I quickly can. So this is setting the tab stop. This is the stop soft tab, how much tab you want to do. These are some search related stuff. When you search with Neovim, the two of them dictate. We are setting in a color column. The color column is this very column that gives me a character gap. We want the colors to be inherited from the terminal itself, and we are setting all of this cool stuff like numbers, relative numbers, auto indent. We are enabling mouse mode as well. We are having a GUI cursor, so no more annoying large block cursor, although there's no problem with it. And we are also setting the clipboard to unnamed plus. So we are essentially inheriting the clipboard of the system. So with all of this, you can proudly open up Neovim and it'll be all yours. But quick bonus, I know we are long past the point of the video, but if you actually want the cool thing where the moment you open up your Neovim, you see the whole Neovim logo pop up. I heard people are a huge fan of it, so I have actually written up just a little bit of stuff, and let me paste it in. It's using a plugin called Alpha. I'm sure you guys might have heard of it. So if I create an alpha.lua, oops, not lua. So there you go, alpha.lua, and I paste this in. I know it looks cool. I know it looks cool already, and I do a quick lazy install that. You'll see that we have essentially recreated my Neovim. I go nvim, and tada! You have your very own Neovim that looks awesome. So you can toggle the file explorer, you can have a new file, you can type in some stuff, rest assured that Neovim will recognize it. So that was Neovim in whatever amount of time this took. So hopefully you had fun watching the video, and hopefully this inspired you to create your own Neovim configuration. Obviously this is just the first part of this series. I have a lot more planned. So currently we just have a simple Neovim setup. If you have followed along till here and you're waiting for the next video, I recommend you subscribe because that video will be dropping very soon. And till then, I recommend you use this Neovim and slowly start porting over from whichever code editor you're using. And this is if you want to learn Neovim, of course. and I'm not forcing it upon anyone. It's once you start using it, you start liking it. And yeah, Neovim is a really unique experience that I recommend all of you try. I'll be linking all the 14 plugins that I have mentioned down below. I'll also be linking all of my my personal config files. So if you need any reference, you can use that. Uh, the current exact setup that I've done for YouTube is a clone of my personal configuration. So this exact state might not be available on the GitHub link that I post below. So if you have any queries, feel free to reach out in the comments. Let me know if this new tutorial kind of video format is something that you guys enjoy, and hopefully you found this video useful in your Neovim journey. If you did, give me a like, tell me what you think, and have a good day. Thanks for watching. This is Noob Science.